quarterly financial report for the quarter ended March 31st, 2020.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Sean Henning, Director of Finance. The item before you this morning is the quarterly financial report as of quarter ended March 31st, 2020. This report serves to provide unaudited activity through the end of the first quarter, and also compares those results to the 2020 adopted budget that was approved in August of last year. Also, it identifies trends or issues that we may face throughout the remainder of 2020. Some of the key points that we'll be talking about this morning include the fact that the general fund performed well during the first quarter. We do anticipate to face some shortfalls as we move forward this year, mostly due to COVID-19. And one of the other significant things that we'll point out is that the Golf Fund continues to face challenges. Focusing on the general fund, revenues were $2.8 million and totaled higher at the end of first quarter as compared to quarter one of last year, and totaled $90 million for year-to-date 2020. Nearly all revenues in the general fund performed well and consistent with our expectations in comparison to the adopted budget. With respect to general fund expenditures through the end of first quarter, they totaled $55.8 million and were $1.7 million higher in 2020 compared to the prior year, and again, they were consistent with budgeted amounts. Public safety continues to be a priority, and public safety alone represents approximately 50% of the adopted budget expenditures. If we were to include highways and streets as well as public safety, those amounts account for 65% of the adopted budget. This slide just shows you where we are year to date with revenues over expenditures, and through this point in time we have a increase, positive change in fund balance of $33.9 million, and that compares with $32.8 million this time last year. So it's about $1.1 million higher and places us in a better position than compared to last year. Key takeaways for the general fund, again, both on the revenue and the expenditure side, expectations are met in accordance with the adopted budget, and we're consistent with our expectations. Public safety and highways and streets both continue to be a priority. And quarter one performance, I should note, will not be indicative of what we expect throughout the remainder of the year, primarily due to COVID-19. For the Golf Fund, while rounds were up 14.3% through the first quarter, and compared to this time last year, however, revenue was only up 1.8%. And golf expenditures were down 19.4% through the end of the first quarter. And part of that is due to the decision to only open one course for 8 weeks during the winter months, which was, two courses through the winter months, and that was implemented at the end of last year. And at the end of the first quarter, the operating deficit was a little over $300,000. So we'll continue to point out that the Golf Fund continues to face challenges. At the end of the first quarter, their unencumbered cash balance was negative $221,000. Our total bonded debt for the city of Wichita is just over $1 billion. And this chart shows that 68 million of that consists of general obligation debt that is supported through property tax. And that's really only about 7% of our total bonded debt. The largest portions of our debt consist of debt that is to be repaid by enterprise funds and revenue bonds. That would be in the gray portion of the slide and the light blue portion of the slide. The next largest category of our bonded debt consists of special assessments, and that accounts for 14% and totals approximately $146 million. Takeaways on debt activity. We had very little activity with small principal payments occurring during the first quarter. A larger portion of our debt activity occurs later in the year with larger principal payments in August, September, and October. Again, GO at large debt remains at only 7% of our total bonded debt, and the city is approximately $914 million below the legal debt limit. As we look forward, COVID-19 has certainly altered our outlook and our forecast for 2020. We're currently projecting a deficit of approximately $10 million for 2020, and as we move 20 revised, we will have more information as we go along regarding especially our revenues as it pertains to local sales tax, franchise fees, interest earnings, and charges for services. Those are the major areas that we expect to be impacted. Preliminary estimates are included in the quarterly report and again will be refined during the revised budget. Overall, the general fund performed well through the end of first quarter. We do not expect that to continue with that trend, and by the end of 2020, we expect a worse picture than what we're looking at today. The golf fund is challenged and has a negative net position. And at this time, I'd like to recommend that the City Council receive and file the quarterly financial report for the period ending March 31st, 2020.
All right, is there discussion on the item or questions? See none. With that, I will make the motion that we accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the quarterly financial report for the quarter ending in March 31st, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor. If there is no discussion on the motion, clerk will open the rolls. Members will cast the vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Excuse me, Madam Clerk.